Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Book Buzz. We are here, your BB librarians. We have with us today Jackie and Beth and Brigid and me, Karen Stern. And we are excited this week because you can place books on hold again at the library and come. There's a pickup service that we have, and you can just go to our website and find out all about how to do that, wakefieldlibrary.org. And as usual, we have a nice selection of things to talk about today, one from pretty much every genre, almost. But we're going to start with Jackie.
All right, so today I actually was able to get an ebook copy. I've been waiting for 6 months for this book, and because ebooks were in such high demand, it took forever. But I read recently Kylie Reid's Such a Fun Age. It actually came out in November. We do own, I think, about 8 copies of it. I think Karen anticipated it being popular and ordered heavily. So you can place those on hold. It is available on Overdrive, and I did buy extra copies for Overdrive. So there's some there. But I really, really enjoyed this book a lot. And I thought it was really well written. I'm pretty sure it's a debut. I think it's her first novel. But anyway, it's about it's the relationship between a mother and her nanny. The mother is, upper middle class, like mid 30s, I think. I think she's in Philadelphia, and white. The nanny, Amira, is 25, and black. And and the book is really kind of about their relationship and their dynamic. It starts right away, right out of the gate with a situation where Amira is watching Alex, the mother's daughter, late at night. Like something happens and she's got the daughter at like 11 o'clock at night, and she wanted to take her outside of the house. So she actually takes her to a grocery store that's like open till 11. So they're there, and the nanny Amira is questioned because she is this young black woman with this white child out at 11 o'clock at night. And so, there's an interaction with her and the security guard. Someone starts taping it. It's that kind of situation. And
babysitting while black.
Yeah. So it's very well done in that you get both perspectives. It's all told in the, third person. It's, an omniscient narrator, but you're sort of seeing things from Amira, the nanny's perspective, and from Alex, the mother's perspective at alternating times, and sort of how this video then becomes this sets off this whole series of events and this trajectory that has kind of both of them kind of considering how the world works. I personally found this really interesting because I have a nanny. She's also white, but so it's not quite the same dynamic, but it kind of brings up a lot of questions about the nature of these kind of transactional relationships. She is kind of my employee. If she is my employee, but we also consider her part of the family, and it's a very kind of different dynamic. That I think you don't necessarily see in all, in a different kind of workplace. You're in someone's in your home, and
right.
So, but it's really well done, and there's a couple things that are kind of coincidency that I wouldn't say they're hard to swallow. It's perfectly believable, but it's clearly to obviously move along the narrative. But I really liked the way she did the characters and how you get this real feel for their lives and for the reality of their relationship. And the mother is really well intentioned, and you can see she's well intentioned, and it just sort of never quite. It kind of keeps going awry, the best of intentions, but it's not. She still has this kind of underlying racism that I think she doesn't realize. She doesn't realize, and she doesn't know how to address. She doesn't quite know what to do. So, right. Like I said, I had requested this book like 5 or 6 months ago on Overdrive, and it came in about a little over a month ago, and it was just so timely. With everything going on in the world, to sit there and think about this in this most, I don't want to say mundane of scenarios, but it was it's not a fraught book, and it's not really about race. It's just sort of about their relationship and how that plays into it. So I found it really thought-provoking without being heavy-handed. It still reads like a Leanne Moriarty or it reads like contemporary fiction. It's not a commentary on anything. It's just, she's just sort of like, this is the reality. Take with it what you will. And neither of them really, neither of the characters are really trying to make any kind of point. It's just, and it's one of those books where there's not, I don't want to say there's no closure, but it's not like you read it and there's this like solution. No one's fixed,
Kind of also like the world as it is.
Like the world, yeah. So I really recommend this book. I just think it was so just handled really well, and really interesting perspectives that you don't see. I just feel like you don't see them that often in a book of this sort of style.
Right.
Let's put it that way.
Yeah, it seems like an interesting mix of, social commentary and family drama in a way that you don't always. I mean, maybe something like Little Fires Everywhere. I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't read that. I haven't read that yet.
Seems like
I could see it being in the same
similar themes
vein.
Well, the other book that I started reading, J. Courtney Sullivan's.
Oh, the new one.
Yeah, the Friends and Strangers that she's going to come talk.
Which she is talking, yes, for a lot of libraries next Tuesday, yes.
And again, it's not an African American nanny, but there's the social issue, the social class issue, and their perspective on the world. And like you're saying, Jackie, how it's a really intimate relationship, and yet it's boss and worker.
Right.
So I think that's got a lot of, and it's the interiority, the domestic fiction type thing.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a great read alike.
And this is also a fairly quick read. I want to say it's less than 300 pages. I read it really quickly.
Right.
I went right through it, but that's a strong recommend. I think it's a good mix for thought-provoking, but still kind of, I would still consider it like in the beach read category, and that it's not so heavy that you wouldn't take it on vacation.
Right.
So that was Kylie Reed's Such a Fun Age.
Thank you. I definitely want to put that one on my list. Beth, what have you got for us?
Okay, so my book kind of follows on Jackie in that it also delves into African Americans and somewhat white people. It's actually much more African Americans. But anyway, so my book is Deacon King Kong by James McBride. And this is his 7th book. His debut book was The Color of Water, a Black man's tribute to his white mother. And so some of you might have read that. This book has gotten a lot of acclaim.
Mm-hmm.
It's been, Oprah has made it her book club book, and it deserves all the acclaim it's getting.
I just had someone requested really this morning.
Oh, yeah, there you go. I assume we're going to get a lot since Oprah is promoting it. So it's set in a neighborhood of Brooklyn, in a housing project there, similar to the housing project that McBride actually grew up in. It begins when the title character, Deacon King Kong, shoots the local drug dealer, whose name is Deans. Now the Deacon he's really a peacemaker in the community. He's a much beloved man, and he's a drunk. And everybody has their theories as to why he shot Deans. And it goes from that he caught tuberculosis to that the housing project's baseball team is falling apart. And that right there is the essence of his book. It's what makes up his book, that there's this serious thing that a young man has been shot, and yet they're talking about that he did it because he got tuberculosis. It's just this absurd humor mixed in with it, and I think that goes throughout the book. the fallout from that shooting comprises the rest of the book. The characters in the novel abound, and McBride's imagination of them is boundless. When I first started the book, he introduces 7 characters in the first 2 pages, and not just their names, but their nicknames as well. So it's a little overwhelming, but it settles down, and his characters are so distinct and quirky that it becomes very easy to tell them apart. And they're really, he fleshes them out. They're really warm characters. There's one couple who have divorced, and they hate each other, and they're always yelling insults at each other, like, "Shut your talking hole, you evil gangster," or "Go take drowning lessons, woman." I mean, it's really colorful. It's very nice. And those 2 quotes, they give you a hint of McBride's language prowess. He's in portraying dialogue of the diverse community of the projects, i.e. African Americans and Latinx. He employs songs, he tells jokes, he tells tall tales, and he uses numerous other traditional African American verbal tradition in the book. And not to sell him short, he also uses traditional Irish tall tales and folklore, and he's got such a range. His prose, like his language and his characters, is richly animated. I love to read it when the prose is so wonderful, so I'm going to read again. Church fights were normally hushed, hissy affairs, full of quiet backstabbing and whispered gossip about bad rice and beans. But this spat was public, the best kind. The 2 choir members involved, Natalie and Sweet Corn, known as the Cousins, were both 33, beautiful and wonderful singers. They had been raised as sisters, still lived together, and had recently had a terrible spat about a worthless young man from the projects named Pudding. So again, gives you a feel for him.
You definitely get a feel for the flavor of it.
McBride, naturally, he also excels at doing the setting. There's the aforementioned housing project, but in the neighborhood there's also the church and the Italian gangsters and some Irish police officers, as well as the docks where things get loaded on and off in Brooklyn. And it takes place in
Oh, that's just what I was going to ask. When?
It takes place in 1969. So Martin Luther King has died. The upheaval that's going on outside doesn't so much enter in, except that heroin is being introduced to the community, and that's going to change this close-knit, tight community. They're trying to battle this scourge of heroin and its consequences, and it really feels like the end of the book is what's coming on the horizon is not so great. And just like Leanne always likes to think about, the housing project is like a character in this book. It's breathing, living, and like the community, it's struggling. The only problem I had with this book is that it flies by. It's just over much too soon. I wanted to keep on being with those wonderful characters. So,
is it short or long, or in?
It's about 350 pages.
Okay.
I was worried, like I said, when I first started it, but then it just disappeared.
Wow.
That's the best kind of complaint, though.
Yeah, I
wish
know.
it didn't end.
but he's, he's written, I want to go back now and read some of his other ones.
Well, and he wrote The Good Lord Bird.
That's right.
About John Brown, and is actually going to be a TV miniseries later.
Oh, cool.
Year.
I didn't know that.
Go.
I think that similar books would be Zora Neale Hurston, Colson Whitehead, and Peter Beattie, Paul Beattie, I'm sorry. Those are all, it's really hard to get, for some, like Colson Whitehead, it's really hard to say who writes like he does, a book like he does, and I feel the same way about James McBride. They're just unique, wonderful books.
Yeah, McBride's got a deep, deep backlist too, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He's been around a long time.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. Another one for the list.
Another one for the list, I know.
Yeah, and it's available. I mean, I downloaded it as an ebook, so both on audio. The audio, I would think, would be really wonderful because you get to hear people say all those, all that wonderful dialogue.
Do you know if they do it with a cast, or is it? Do you have any idea about the audio?
The one I saw was one man.
One performer.
Yeah.
All right. So Deacon King Kong.
James McBride, Deacon King Kong.
Great. All right. I'll go next, and I have something quite different. My book is, I don't have the book, but it's called The Wall by John Lanchester. And there are kind of so many ways you could look at this book if somebody said to you, what's it about? And I'd start by saying it's kind of a near future dystopian. If you kind of think maybe, that bad movie Waterworld.
Terrible movie.
And hey, it gets the job done, but kind of gentler than that, with overtones of a good action adventure or military buddy movie. Oh, and there's a love story too. So I mean, there's it's got a little bit of everything. I could also say that it was cli-fi or climate fiction, which is a fast emerging genre in itself. But instead of I don't want to get into lots of definitions of what cli-fi is or isn't. But I'll tell you about the book because it's a really good example of cli-fi. It's set in near future England, where the sea levels have risen to the point that beaches are kind of this thing of the nostalgic past. They just don't exist anymore. And a wall has had to be built all around the coastline of the British Isles, not just to keep the water out, but also to keep the others out. And the others are these nameless, faceless people who are continually trying desperately to get over the wall and to melt away without a trace into the country. And the country itself is very fearful of the others, which is why they kind of, call them that.
This feels like it might have climate fiction and also some Brexit overtones.
Yeah, definitely Brexit.
I was thinking it felt like Game of Thrones. Like the White Walker.
There you go. It's not quite as epic in scope as Game of Thrones, but it definitely has all of those in there. So the idea is to keep the others out, and in order to do that, the country compels its citizens, all of its citizens, well, unless you get special dispensation, but most of its citizens to do a 2-year mandatory service on the wall as what they call a defender. So Joseph Kavanagh is our first person narrator, and he's just starting his his only stint on the wall as the book begins. And I'll just read you a little bit from the first page of the book because the tone and the setting are really important in this book. And he starts with, it's cold on the wall. That's the first thing everybody tells you and the first thing you notice when you're sent there. And it's the thing you think about all the time you're on it. And it's the thing you remember when you're not there anymore. It's cold on the wall. You look for metaphors. It's cold as slate, as diamond, as the moon. Cold as charity. That's a good one. But soon you soon realize that the thing about the cold is that it isn't a metaphor. It isn't like anything else. It's nothing but a physical fact. This kind of cold anyway, cold is cold is cold. So he spends kind of the first chapter like just taking you into this place that he's been unleashed into. It's the setting is really important, and that tone, the tone of his sort of conversational, almost laid back, like he's talking to you across the room, or like some kind of grown-up bedtime story or campfire tale. He really wants to make you feel what it's like to be on the wall, and he creates words like concrete, water, sky, wind, cold. He like sticks them all together to give you the feeling of like how all those elements of being on the wall kind of come together and hit you at once. He talks about the different types of cold, type 1 cold and type 2 cold, and his descriptions are like, type 1 you can fight by moving, you can fight by thinking about something else, and type 2 there is nothing else. At times there's not even you. Type 1 people complain about, type 2 makes them go silent even afterwards. Type 2 is a premonition of death. So there's the feeling. And you add to that all those physical discomforts, the kind of intense boredom and the intense dread about the others, any minute able to come over the wall and attack you and try to get by. And by the time you're done with the first chapter, you're thinking, wow, I get it. Like, I really can't take any more of this. And then chapter 2 comes, and the other characters, so his teammates, his comrades in action on the wall, are introduced, and that's where the buddy adventure survival movie begins. And that I won't tell you too much about, because that's the story, but you get the idea. I will say there is both physical and psychological suspense. There's some military action. The story pivots around both deep betrayal and intense friendship and camaraderie. There are scenes of both horrifying tragedy and survival. And all of it written in this same tone of someone kind of telling you war stories or around a campfire. And at the end, despite all those horrors that he's taking you through and the difficulties the characters survive, there's this abiding sense of hope and of kind of the inherent goodness in most humans anyway, I won't say all, which is certainly what I read these kinds of dystopian novels for. And I think a lot of people do. I mean, I think a lot of people think of dystopian novels, all they think of is, oh, the Armageddon of it all, you know, but there's actually almost always this kind of strain of hope in it. And back to the beginning, I was mentioning Cli-Fi. So Cli-Fi really is just a kind of dystopian story that centers around the changes in the climate that force humans into extreme situations. And this book is a really good example of that. So that's The Wall by John Lanchester. Highly recommend. It's also a quick read. I can't believe it's more than 250 pages.
Yeah, it's pretty thin.
Yeah, you slide right through it. Definitely good character relationships, and you know, surprisingly, given that kind of laconic tone that he has, you feel for him, especially for him, because it's all first person. You're getting everything from his point of view.
How did you happen upon this one?
This was
see
actually
it from ordering, or did it come up as a recommendation?
It was a recommendation from Leanne. Leanne's, it was one of the ones that we did in her roundtable for Readers Advisors, because she did a whole section on Cli-Fi. So
oh, nice.
This was one of the benchmark books that we talked. And
one of the other ones was Ursula Le Guin's. Wait, I've got Octavia Butler's Parable of the Sower.
That was Karen's already
what I talked last time.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Talked about. Yeah, that's true. But the other one was Dimmeline.
Marrow Thieves.
Sorry.
Marrow Thieves is
the Marrow Thieves. Thank you.
Oh, right.
The Marrow Thieves was the other one, and that's that's an interest. That sounds like a really interesting read too. Dimmeline. Does anybody remember her last name?
I think it's Sherry Dimmeline.
Sherry Dimmeline. Thanks.
Last name.
Yeah, the Marrow Thieves was really good.
Yeah, you read that one, didn't you, Beth?
Yeah.
Right. So we'll put that in the credits at the end too.
Yeah.
Good. Now from apocalypse to
romance.
To me, well, I would not say this is a romance, because it's already so. This is so I'm going to talk about the Eyre Affair by Heather Cox and Jessica Morgan.
I think you should spell that so that they know what.
So it's the Eyre, H-E-I-R Affair. And
because there is another book, the E-Y-R-E Affair, right?
Yes, that is right.
Yes.
It's not the AIR affair, so.
So this is the much anticipated sequel to their previous book, The Royal We, which that one is more of a romance, though I would say firmly these are not romances in the sense that that's what they are. They are like women's fiction. They're relationships. They're about it. And so the Royal We, which is I'll introduce that one briefly. So the Royal We involves an American woman named Bex who falls in love with the heir to the British throne. It is a slightly altered monarchy. It's not Prince William. It's a William equivalent, sort of altered monarchy. And while she is studying abroad, they fall in love. Eventually that book ends with their wedding. They get married at the end of that book. So that one's more romancy, but it's a lot of relationships. And this is kind of, if you've read that book, there's sort of it ends on somewhat of a cliffhanger, even though you know they're married, because there's kind of a big secret that's going to come out. And this book deals a lot with the fallout of that information, and also their struggles to have an heir to the throne, because that is obviously part of their job as part of the monarchy. It's told in the first person from Beck's point of view, so you get kind of an outsider view of the monarchy, because even as she is married to the heir to the throne, she's still like not English, and she's not a part of that world, so it's still like her trying to navigate that world. It's very funny and very like emotional. So Bex has a very good sense of humor. Anyone who is familiar with Cox and Morgan know that they run a fashion blog called Go Fug Yourself, where they look at celebrities' outfits and they make fun of the ugly ones and praise the beautiful ones. And they also have, since writing the Royal We, they have an interest in royals and the monarchy. So they also have like a deep well of history in what sort of European royal history to draw parallels and parts into their own characters that they've made up, because they are all fictional, but they draw from like beloved real life stories about royals because they know them. And I really enjoyed it. It's a nice escape type book, and if you haven't read The Royal We, I do really recommend it, because it's a great read. And this is an excellent sequel that does literally pick up like seconds after that. And I guess maybe it was like a week later we pick up, but we flash back to the immediate ending of that. And it deals more with what it's like to be married rather than to be just like in love. So that's what it's like. They're on one level, like they are a young couple that is trying to find out what it's like to be married to each other and to live a life together at the same time that they're trying to navigate a hugely public life.
Right.
Because they are married. I think obviously this year has had quite a few upheavals within the British monarchy. So if you are the kind of person who has followed those stories, this might interest you. This is obviously different, and Bex is white, so there's no racial element in it.
But still, the whole American thing going to
outsider,
very outsider.
Brigid, is there going to be a third book?
I'm not sure. I think they could, because there definitely could be a third book. This does kind of definitively wrap up a lot of storylines that were kind of left hanging. But I didn't necessarily think The Royal We needed a sequel, even though it does kind of have it's like a cliffhanger, but you don't necessarily
need to know.
You don't necessarily need to know the fallout of the events that are going to happen, but it just kind of leaves you at this place. This one doesn't have the same ending, and I could see them writing more of these. It does. The one thing I would say is it does kind of meander along for probably about halfway before it really gains like a narrative thrust. Like it is just a lot of like, here's what it's like to be married, and we do this and we do that and we go on these other places, and then you find out sort of some secrets later in the book that really do kind of drive the rest of the action. But it kind of counts upon you being invested in these characters already to kind of drag you through, because it is it's a longish book. It reads very quickly. It's fun and light, so you won't, it's not like a slog by any means, but it is there. If you aren't particularly invested in the characters, which I think you would be if you had read the first one and then you read this one, you might be like, why am I reading this? Nothing is happening until all of a sudden a lot happens. And it's really,
give it some time.
Yeah,
this is a real theme, because there was also Red, White, and Royal Blue. Was that the other one?
Yeah.
Who's that? Casey McQuiston?
Yeah, from last year. I think it was last year. It was 2018, so long ago.
I don't, not this year.
I remember you talking it, Brigid.
Well,
Yeah.
I remember you talking it.
Yes, so I read that one, and so that one obviously, and that also has like the child of the president as well, and they're gay.
There's a lot to swallow.
There's a lot going on here, where this is like less complicated on some levels.
Yeah.
But yes, still like Americans and like navigating this kind of complicated,
arcane, weird old.
Actually, and
sorry,
Jasmine Guillory's wedding, or no, what is it called? Royal Holiday.
Royal Holiday, yes.
I mean, that's not quite as good as it, but in the same vein, American.
Yeah, if you liked that, because I do think Jasmine Guillory also in that does a good way of being like, here's what it's like to sort of be in but not in, like,
but not in
family situation. Yeah. So if you liked that part of that book, you would probably like parts of this as well, because it's similar. Obviously, she's literally married to the prince, but it's still kind of that information. And I do think a lot of people who are sort of the royals are obviously a fascination for a lot of people, and particularly in this country where they really are just like, oh, what some fancy people did things, as opposed to, I know that they're like more contentious in countries where you have to, pay for them. Whereas here we're just like, wear tiaras, we enjoy that.
Yes, it's easy to admire from afar.
Exactly. So like we don't have to deal with them in any way except for this. And I think that this does a really good job of getting what's interesting about the monarchy, but also being like, this is absurd and ridiculous that this exists.
Right.
So it's a good balance there. And it does come out this week. So July 7th, I'll say it's a new release, and you can put it on hold from us.
You can put it on hold, yes. And we, it may take a little while to get there because everything's taking a little while
a little bit longer
rev up at the moment. But we will be getting those hardcovers to you soon. Meanwhile, keep checking the ebooks and audiobooks out, and let us know if you have any questions about how to do that. You can call us on 781-619-1100 and talk to a real live librarian these days. And we can also give you help choosing books, just choosing what you might like to read as opposed to how to find them. So we are happy to do that all the time, as you know, here at the BB, and we're really excited to be talking to you again in that way. So check us out at wakefieldlibrary.org and find out what's new. Keep an eye on all our social media and take a look out for what's to come. All right, we are really happy that you joined us today, and we will see you in a couple weeks' time. For today, that's Book Buzz. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.